Okay guys, welcome back. It's been a while. I've not been on the bank for about 2 weeks, so much needed time on the bank today. I'm going to be here till about 6 o'clock, then I'll go back and get sorted out ready for work. But yeah, I'll show you where we've got the rods at the moment, and then I'll run you through a bit about my approach and why I chose this spot. I'll turn the camera on now for you. Okay, flip the camera on for you. There's the rods. So I've got my right hand rod is out here, right at the far back. It's quite a notorious spot there for the fish, which is why it's going to be quite difficult for me to explain my approaches to waters when I know this water very well, so I don't really take much thought into where I'm going. And the left hand rod is down here. There's a gravel bar, so I've got it just propped up on top of there. The bait I'm using today, I'll show you them shortly. But yeah, we've had a bit of action on the far rod already. I've had a couple of bleeps and I've seen a couple of swirls, so it's looking promising for that rod, but I'll keep you up to date and let you know if we catch anything. So the bait I'm using today is the Bait Guru Essential Fruit Pop-Ups in yellow. Now what I've done with these is I've just trimmed them down a little bit, but they absolutely smell fantastic, and yellow goes really well on this venue for me. So yeah, I'm using these today. Might switch it up, put a little snowman rig on soon because the spots I'm on at the moment are very clear. So yeah, see how we get on with these, but these smell fantastic. So talking about approach then, when I approach a new water, or even a water that I fish quite a lot, the first thing I'm thinking about is weather. What's the weather doing? Is it bright, sunshine, blue skies? I'm going to start thinking about maybe zig fishing, especially this time of year. I'm going to get some zigs out. And then on the flip side of that, obviously if it's very dull, very gloomy, pressure's dropped, I'm going to be on the bottom. Some of the preconceived ideas there before I actually turn up and think, right, this is exactly how I'm going to fish. Now, I fall foul to this quite a lot, and that is, I'll pick a venue, I'll have a look at it on Google Maps, and I'll think, right, I'm going to get in that peg, I'm going to cast out to that island, I'm going to use this bait with this rig. Now, I still do it, and I'm sure a lot of you guys do it as well, but one of the main things, one of the key things is try and stray away from that idea, because things change. Obviously you turn up, you get that preconceived idea, and then all of a sudden everything goes wrong. So that's point number one, is try and stray away from those preconceived ideas. I'm going to do this when I get to the bank. So we've got that preconceived idea out of the way, so we're going with a clean mind. When you turn up at the venue, especially a new venue, if I'm turning up at a new venue, I don't get the kit out. I take a bucket with me, maybe a water bucket, and that's just to put on a peg when I've finally chosen one. But if you leave with your kit, you're more than likely to get very impatient and just set up in a peg. Whereas if you haven't got your kit with you, it doesn't really make any difference. You just keep walking around until you find them, until you find the fish showing, or some signs, which we'll move on to in a minute. So yeah, I'll have a good walk round. I tend to try and spend 45 minutes to an hour. I think within that time you should be able to identify, using your different watercraft skills, as to whether or where the fish are and if they're showing, and how they're feeding. So obviously you're having a walk round, and don't rush. That's another key, is because you've got the kit in the car, you think, oh, quickly run round, I've done my check, and then I'll get in a peg that I already had the idea about getting into. So yeah, stray away from that, and that sort of ties in with point number one. So have a look round, obviously identifying key points where the fish might be located. That's not to say they will be there just because it's an ideal spot for them. They could be anywhere, and that's the idea of looking and spending time before you actually get your kit set up. So obviously this venue today, I've got quite a lot of rushes around the outsides now. It's windy today, but you'd still be able to identify a knock from a fish because it'll look completely different to just all the rushes swaying. That's a really good point to pick up on there. Is take a look at the leaves, wildlife, coots as well. Coots are a really, really good identifier of carp, or any fish for that matter. If they spook off, they're usually tightly packed in groups, and they'll have a little mooch around. But then all of a sudden they'll just bomb burst and they'll just go in all different directions. 9 times out of 10 there'll be a fish underneath them, and that's what spooked them. The second thing about coots is they'll make a very high pitched warble. It's quite hard to describe, but it's a noise that they make very often. And then their neck will be going and they'll be swimming off. So that again is a warning sign. If they're in the shallow water as well, so you're sort of talking 1 to 2 foot, they sometimes can sort of stand up on leaf debris and start banging their feet, and that's them trying to get rid of whatever's underneath them. Now there's only going to be a couple of things underneath them, and that's, fish, so they're obviously scared about something. So coots, birds in general, can be a really good identifier of where the fish are. So I'll move on to point 3 now. We've spoke about having that preconceived idea, and we've also spoke about the importance of having a walk round without any kit, and we all know why we walk around with no kit now. Then we've moved on to birds, wildlife, rushes. Those are some of the key points that I'd be looking for. On a windy day, the rushes, you're not really going to be able to identify anything, but bird life, definitely. They can be a good indicator of where the fish are. The second thing is bubbles. So on a calm day, when there's no ripples, even on days where there's a slight ripple, slight wind on top of the water, you can still identify bubbles. Now, this is important. If the bubbles are a consistent stream and they pop as soon as they get on top of the water, 9 times out of 10, it's natural gases. They'll be in one spot and they'll just pop as soon as they get on top of the surface. Alright. When fish make bubbles, when they're rooting around and feeding, the bubbles, they move quite a lot, so they'll often trail around. Our tench are really good at doing that and letting themselves go, because they're always grubbing along the bottom and they're moving quite fast across the bottom, sucking everything up. So the bubbles will move and they'll usually hang around on the surface for a little bit, and there'll be different sizes as well. So that's another key point with bubbles. Some people can get them mixed up, and I used to fall foul of this until I really started paying some attention to it and doing some research. So yeah, bubbles are another good identifier. And then we've got, moving on to point 4, is tail swirls. Swirls of the fish that are just under the water. Now, there'll be a lot of displacement of water where the water will just go flat. Certainly if there's a little bit of wind causing some ripples, the water will just go flat, and that can be a good identifier that the fish are just underneath the surface, particularly on hot days. A day like today is going to be perfect. It is quite hot today, to be fair. So that's another key one to look out for when you're having a mooch round. So we'll say they're point 3 and 4. All right, and we'll move on to point 5 now. I'm tempted to get the bivvy up now, actually, because it looks like it might drizzle a bit. So I'll maybe come back to you when I've got that set up. So I've got the hide up, and the sun's come out again. So now I'm hot. But anyway, it's up for in case it rains. So yeah, moving on to our little walk round before I approach the water and before I actually set up. We spoke about a few points now. Point 5, I would say, would be the ultimate identifier for a fish being in the area, and that is it's showing itself. Whether that be just its shoulders over the water or whether it's actually leaping out of the water. It's hard evidence. That's where fish are. That's where they like being. So situations like that where they're just constantly leaping out, find that area, get on them straight away. Obviously, if they don't do that and it's just getting some of the other identifiers, then having a pocket full of bait is always a good shout as well. Because if you can put some bait out, certainly as the water's clearing up, in the edges, you can have a look at them later on in a couple of hours, have a little walk around, see if the bait's gone, in the margins. Technically you're fishing, but you're not, if that makes sense. you know that the fish have got confidence on that spot. So that's something that I would always do. Take a couple of handfuls in your pockets or in a bait bucket, and just scoop some in the edges, see if it goes. But yeah, there's a few. Obviously, we've had a walk around now. We've got our identifiers. We're now having a look and seeing what's happening in front of us. Wind is another key for me, and pressure. I'm a big moon phases and stuff. I don't really pay much attention to that, but pressure, yes. The general rule for air pressure, you can buy gadgets and stuff that do it. My watch does it for me. I've got a Garmin, the Fenix 6, tells me what the air pressure is doing. You can find out also on weather forecasts. However, it's not that accurate. It's hard to predict air pressure. General rule of thumb: lower the air pressure, the lower in the water column the fish are likely to be. It's not a definite, likely. So the higher the air pressure, sunny weather, high pressure coming in, you're getting the zigs out, you're in that top third of the water column. Low pressure, gloomy, rainy, more likely going to push down to the bottom, you know, in the sort of 990s to 1,000 bars. So that's another thing, a little general rule of thumb. It's worked for me. Give it a go, let me know how you get on. So yeah, air pressure is one that I pay attention to, and wind as well. If the wind, for example, on this lake that I'm on now, if the wind's coming into my face, I know that I've got some cover where there's some slack water where the reeds and rushes are at the far back. That might be a good shout, better calm water for them. However, on the flip side of that, all the natural food is now going to be on my bank, so don't neglect the margins. Yeah, there is a lot to think about. However, once you get your head around watercraft, it's actually quite simple, and you'll start to do things naturally. So yeah. So another point I've just thought of, when we've actually had a walk around and we've taken all those previous points into consideration and we've found out where we want to be fishing, is just get a bare lead on and have a bit of a feel around. That's what I tend to do. I haven't got a marker set up or anything like that. All I'm doing is I've got the quick change swivels on my lead clips or on my helicopter set up, depending on what I'm fishing, and I'll just flick a lead out and just feel for that solid drop. Today I've had 2 really good drops, so I'm confident that I'm on a good patch and a good clear spot at the bottom of the lake. That's very important. There's no point finding all these signs and then just dropping your bait in some weed where the fish can't actually get to it. So that's really important. And then I'm fishing at the moment how I fish probably 90% of the time, and that is a single hook bait with no more than a dozen freebies around it, and they're not concentrated around my bait itself. They are sporadic, so the fish are constantly hunting, whereas if you just put them all in one spot, they might get spooked by that, with there being so much bait in the area. Whereas if you just plod them around, and then you've got your nice bright stinky one sticking up in the middle of them all, that could be quite effective as well. So yeah, it's another point. Make sure you get a bare lead out and have a feel around. So yeah, we're just coming to the end of the video now. This video was mainly aimed at my approach to waters and what I do and my watercraft. Hopefully some of the points will be helpful for you, and you can use them in your sort of day-to-day angling and potentially make you a better angler. I think watercraft is something that a lot of people neglect. Just sort of tip up, chuck the rods out and sit behind them and hope something happens. But watercraft can definitely give you an edge. If there's anything that I've missed, let me know. I'm not a master by any means of this game, but yeah, all tips are welcome, and I might be able to add them to my watercraft skills. If you can think of any other videos that you'd like me to do, whether that is expanding on some of the points I've been on today, whether it's kit, equipment, rigs, tackle, bait, anything, let me know. I'll do a video and hopefully help you guys out. But yeah, if you can, give me a like, subscribe, comment, do whatever you can to help my channel grow. That'll be much appreciated. Thank you.